Well, thank you. Thanks, Miranda, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for letting me speak to you before the end of the day. I just want to talk to you a little bit more about this coalition that we've been working on with Elisa and Miranda for the last couple of years. We refer to it as the RUSP Coalition, which, if you're not familiar with what RUSP stands for, it's the Recommended Uniform Screening Panel. That's what the federal government recommends that states screen for on their newborn screening panel. So like Miranda said, I'm with Travere Therapeutics and I do our state government affairs work, and I'll take you through some of this advocacy work that we've been doing alongside the ALD Alliance the last couple of years. But to bring it back to ALD for a second before we dive into kind of who our mission is and what we've been up to, as you all know, ALD has been screened for now for almost, over 10 years, but it was added to the RUSP almost 10 years ago now, right? Not quite 10 to the RUSP, but this idea of eradicating death by zip code, making sure that every baby is screened for the same conditions in every state, was really born out of this idea that Elisa found that after ALD was added, it was taking too long for all of the states to then screen. As you know, there's still 3 states that are not yet screening for XALD. And so this was born out of her idea that this is taking too long and we need to fix this newborn screening solution writ large. And so that's what the mission of this group is. We're working together with patient advocacy organizations and industry together to end this idea of death by zip code and make sure that every baby is screened for the same conditions in each state. So we've been working on several things over the last couple of years, but we've been coming together to come to the federal government and ask them for support on different funding requests. We've asked them to help us lead on efforts to make the newborn screening process at the federal level a little bit more patient-friendly. If you've gone before the RUSP or if you know anything about what that process looks like, it's really frustrating for patients and families to go through. So we've been working on some different ideas to see if we can make that a little bit more patient-friendly. We've also been doing a ton of education in order to fix the newborn screening system. We need support from our congressional leaders, and so we've been doing a ton of education. Newborn screening is really confusing for anyone, and so going in and educating staff on what it is and how long it takes once a condition has been added to the RUSP to then be added in all 50 states. So we created just a simple graphic together just to help everyday staff and their bosses understand what this means. And then there are some existing funding sources through the federal government. And so we've been trying to make sure that states know about them. And so we've done simple things like send states letters and helped basically the federal government like advertise that these exist and that states can apply. So that's kind of a snapshot of what we've been working on. And now I want to take you through kind of some of our goals for this year and how you might be able to help. So our goal is to make sure that the funding problem that states have, all state lab partners are really, everyone that works in those labs, they're really tremendous people, and they all want to help make sure that the different screens for various conditions, including ALD, right, are added, but they all run into the same problem, right? There's not enough funding, and so our work has been really centered around making sure there's a dedicated funding source so that states don't have to scramble, basically, and that they know from year to year that there's dedicated funding. So we've been working on trying to find a way to make that work. Also, as I said, this whole idea of newborn screening is really confusing for congressional leaders and their staff, and so we've been doing a ton of education with them to make sure that they understand what this means to constituents in their states, like everyday people like you and I. And then also we're looking for more leaders in Congress and our state lawmakers to make sure that they understand newborn screening and can help fight for it when different things come before them. So as I've hit on a few times, newborn screening is confusing. And so one project that we've been working on this year is message testing. I know it sounds kind of silly that we would do this, but we're trying to find a message that really resonates with everybody and can help really clear up any confusion that may exist around newborn screening. So what you can do is we've been doing, we've basically hired someone to look at and bring people in and do like testing and do calls with people and like focus groups to see what messages resonate, so that when we go before like congressional leaders or staff, that these messages like hit home and they hit all of the right points. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure, right, that there's enough funding. And so we've been testing different messages with everyday people like you and I, and also people that we call like quote unquote policy influencers, some people that may have experience either in government or with newborn screening. We've also been working to see what newborn screening messages resonate with parents and non-parents. I know that, you know, if you're not a parent, a lot of times you don't know that newborn screening even exists until you go through this process. Also testing varying education levels and geographic location to make sure that everyone that we talk to understands newborn screening and the important role that it plays for ALD and for you know, conditions that are on the RUSP and conditions that are coming down the pike. It's really, there's so much innovation going on right now, and there's more diseases that are being found and more treatments that are coming, so it's really important that we understand this and can help create an effective strategy around it. So these are on the screen, these are just some of the early findings that have come out of these focus groups. And what we found is that when you were more specific, you gave more details to these focus groups, they understood the importance of newborn screening and they wanted to help. So that's good, right? Once people understand newborn screening, they want to help, they want to make sure that we can get the funding. We also found that just like avoiding blame, you know, this isn't the federal government's fault, this isn't state government's fault, you know, this is nobody's fault, this is where we are and we need to work together to find a solution, which leads to the next point, which is just we found that when you emphasize what's working in our current system and what needs to be improved, that really helps people get the message faster. And also accepting differences that depending on where you are and what role you play in our newborn screening system, we might need to use a different message. And then finally, just we found that, you know, we can always expect some level, unfortunately, of opposition. Funding right now is just a really touchy subject, more than usual, right? And so we have to, this is, you know, why it makes this work that much more important, to make sure that, you know, hopefully we can find funding long term so that, you know, it doesn't take over 10 years for all states to be screening for a condition that has a treatment. So that's just kind of a little sneak peek, more to come. Hopefully next year at this conference we'll have more to say and we can share the message and share hopefully good news that it's been working and resonating. So this is just my final slide. I just want to invite you all to join us in this effort, no matter what, you know, who you are in this room, if you're a patient, a doctor, you know, you work at a lab, we need everyone to help us with this. And so I would just encourage you to reach out to Elisa or Miranda and get involved. You know, we need more people to share their story, to help, you know, showcase to their elected officials why newborn screening is so important. You know, we'd love to have, you know, you join us with future meetings. And if you can't join, we do lots of Zoom meetings too. So there's lots of opportunity, and, you know, we need everyone to help us on this quest to end death by zip code. So thank you all so much, and I'll take any questions. Yeah.
Just because I have no knowledge of anything, but why would you go federal government first and then try to get the states to sort of adhere to that, as opposed to maybe taking a state's first approach and recognize which states are more likely to adopt certain standards, and once you hit sort of a critical mass, it can force other states into adoption as well?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think just in the way our current newborn screening system is set up, with the federal focus, that's why we've been focused on trying to secure federal funding, just because there is this federally recommended panel. But I know there's other organizations in the room, and depending on like what the future of newborn screening looks like and how federal funding shakes out, like I guess we'll have to see, basically is the answer. And we'll have to look at everything, I think, in order to make sure that states are adding these recommended conditions, because at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that it's fair, that every state is equal.
And what would you say are the largest or the most significant bottlenecks to advancing adoption?
Funding. It's just funding. Every state you talk to, they want to add the screens. You heard from Maryland this morning, right? That was a perfect example. They needed new equipment. They needed more staff. Their equipment broke. Like, all of those things, right, require money and a long-term funding source, so that there's stability, so that they know that they can add these conditions and keep up with it down the line. Yeah, thank you for the questions.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I was at a grand rounds recently where a physician blamed, and it wasn't fair, and I felt, and it was a newborn screening situation, not ALD. Mm-hmm. And I happen to know that it's a state that is chronically underfunded and was a challenge to get ALD on, and was blaming, it just came out and said the newborn screening program doesn't want to do a complete screen like California does. And I felt terrible listening to it, and I wanted to defend that state, because I felt like this is on a state-by-state level. I think funding is an issue, and I think the key for our community, and particularly in the next few years, is to avoid laying blame and just looking for solutions. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, yeah, kudos to, is there another question?
Yeah, I just want to add that there is so much misinformation right? The states want to do everything, they just don't have the money to do so. And the limited grants from CDC and HRSA, those also have restrictions on them. So a state, I'll just use an example of New York, and I think Joe is gone, but for us to add MPS 2 was $750,000. They got the CDC grant, which was $250,000. How do they make up that difference, right? If they're not getting the money from the state. So we're just trying to figure out how we can support the states to get what they need so they can move forward.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you to Elisa, Miranda, and I forgot to mention, sorry, Hunter's Hope in the back too. Thank you to Anna for all of her work on this too. It's taken everyone to get to where we are, and hopefully next year we'll have some good news to share. So thank you.